Nous sommes très heureux de vous accueillir aujourd'hui au nom de l'Université de la Terre et du C3D, le Collège des directeurs du développement durable, pour adresser cette question tout simplement existentielle. Est-il possible de vivre dans les limites planétaires ? Quelques chiffres d'abord pour poser le cadre. 1,7, vous le savez, c'est le nombre de planètes nécessaires pour subvenir chaque année aux besoins de notre humanité. L'an dernier, en seulement 7 mois, 4 pour un Français et 2,5 pour un Américain, nous avons épuisé l'ensemble des ressources biologiques que la Terre peut régénérer en 12 mois. En d'autres termes, nous vivons chaque année à crédit et le phénomène ne cesse de s'accélérer. 6, c'est le nombre de limites planétaires que nous avons d'ores et déjà dépassées sur les 9 identifiées par le Stockholm Resilience Center, des limites qui garantissent la stabilité de nos écosystèmes et au-delà desquelles nous rentrons donc, nous disent les scientifiques, dans une zone tout à fait inconnue. Et puis enfin, 203 milliards de dollars. C'est ce qu'ont coûté en 2023 les catastrophes climatiques comme les tempêtes, les incendies et les inondations qui sont multipliées à notre économie mondiale. Donc un chiffre qui a été multiplié par 3 en 25 ans, selon une étude parue dans le journal Les Échos en début de semaine. Derrière ces chiffres, donc une seule et même réalité. Notre modèle économique fondé sur une exploitation infinie des ressources est à bout de souffle. Le temps est venu de le réinventer en profondeur, de repenser notre manière de produire, de consommer, d'investir, de mesurer la performance, d'arbitrer nos choix économiques pour faire émerger des modèles d'affaires plus sobres et résilients, compatibles avec les limites que notre planète nous impose. Le tout dans un délai record et avec des vents contraires d'une rare intensité. Alors, comment fait-on ? Par quoi commencer ? Comment convaincre à grande échelle que la performance économique, la performance environnementale et la performance sociale peuvent et doivent converger ? Quel levier systémique activer pour faire émerger ce nouveau paradigme économique collectivement, tout en créant de la valeur pour nos entreprises françaises, européennes et pour la société plus largement ? Pour nous aider à répondre à ces nombreuses questions et complexes, nous avons la chance d'être avec deux invités exceptionnels qui, parmi les penseurs et acteurs les plus influents sur ces sujets. Kate Ratworth, vous pouvez me rejoindre sur scène. You can come with us, Kate. Vous êtes économiste à Oxford. Vous avez créé la désormais célèbre Donut Economy, qui propose donc une approche révolutionnaire qui met véritablement notre économie au service du vivant et donc de notre humanité. Vous allez avoir l'occasion de nous en parler plus en détail juste après. Et puis Mathis Wackernagel qui est avec nous depuis la Californie. Vous êtes, Mathis, l'un des premiers à avoir alerté il y a 30 ans sur l'absolue nécessité de repenser l'économie à travers le prisme de ce que vous appelez les flux physiques. C'est la raison pour laquelle vous avez notamment créé le Global Footprint, le premier indicateur capable de mesurer la pression qu'exerce l'humanité et donc chacune de nos activités économiques sur les ressources naturelles. Un outil que vous mettez à disposition des décideurs à travers le Global Footprint Network, donc un think tank que vous avez co-créé pour les accompagner dans leurs choix stratégiques. On aura l'occasion d'en revenir. Un grand merci à tous les deux d'être parmi nous. Merci à tous aussi d'être ici présents. On a 1h30 devant nous. On va garder un petit quart d'heure à la fin si on y arrive pour toutes vos questions. Donc n'hésitez pas à les noter au fil de l'eau. Et je vous propose, pour démarrer la discussion, de revenir aux fondamentaux pour bien comprendre donc ces théories qui structurent véritablement aujourd'hui l'émergence de ce nouveau paradigme économique. Kate, si vous en êtes d'accord, je vous laisse donc ouvrir le bal pour nous présenter en une vingtaine de minutes à la fois ce qu'est précisément la théorie du donut et surtout comment est-ce que selon vous un décideur aujourd'hui économiste ou autre devrait penser au XXIe siècle. Kate, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. That's the end of the French. The question we're asking here today is, can we live in planetary boundaries? For me, the answer is no, not if we carry on with the economics that we are teaching and we are inheriting. I'm here as a renegade economist, determined to transform the economic mindsets that are still being taught now in our universities around the world, because we are not equipping today's young people with the mindset that they desperately need and deserve if they are going to have even half a chance of enabling humanity to thrive this century. I studied economics at university. I'm 54. I went to university in 1990. I was looking for a mindset that would actually help me transform the world, and I didn't get it. And if you, hand up if you've ever studied economics of any kind. Yeah, there's lots of us here, okay. So I'm gonna give us a whirlwind introduction to economics. Here we are. The starting point, the first diagram we learn, it's supply and demand. Economics means the art of household management. On day one, welcome to the art of household management. Here's the market. We go straight to the market. And it means we're immediately focused on price. This becomes the metric of concern of economics. Everything now must be measured in its financial value. That is not obvious or necessary, but it's the way it goes. And anything that falls outside the price contract is called an externality. If you want to talk about climate breakdown, it's an externality. You want to talk about the death of coral reefs, the collapse of the glaciers, it's an environmental externality. This alone is reason enough to rewrite economics. We will never do justice to our planetary home if we call her death an environmental externality. What about humanity, the portrait of ourselves? Can I have my slides? Thank you. The self-portrait of humanity is rational economic man. I decided he needed a picture, needs to be made visible. So he'd be a man, standing alone, no dependence. He's got money in his hand, ego in his heart, a calculator in his head. He's got nature at his feet. He hates work. He loves luxury. He knows the price of everything, and he can never get enough. These are the traits that are given to human beings in economic models. And the more that students learn about these models, from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, the more that they value him, the more they value competition over collaboration, the more they value self-interest over altruism. Who we tell ourselves we are shapes who we become. We are remade by our models. We should take care in the stories we tell about ourselves. And the goal? What's the goal of economics? We never even discussed it in my 4 years of education because it's so obvious, and you can hear it in every politician's speech and in every economist's advice. It's growth. Thank you. It's growth. GDP growing endlessly, no matter how rich a nation already is. Here we are in France. I've just come from England, two of the richest countries in the history of humanity. And yet our politicians and their economic advisors say, even here, the solutions to our problems is growth, yet more growth. It's an insanity. There has to be another mindset. I feel so ashamed to meet 18-year-olds who are going to university today in the context of the world that they're seeing, they're choosing economics and they're being taught this. How dare we? They deserve to start in the 21st century with the realities and the challenges of our times. So I wrote a book to restart that mindset. And let me share with you some of the ideas of that. We start with a goal that's actually worth pursuing, and it's a donut. This is the only kind of donut you have to like. You don't need to eat donuts. The best ones are conceptual. 0 calories. Think of humanity's use of Earth's resources radiating out from the center of that picture. So the hole in the middle of the donut is a place where people are falling short on the essentials of life. That's where people don't have the resources to have good food and clean water and housing and education and healthcare and transport. These 12 social dimensions, I crowdsourced them from the Sustainable Development Goals. It means that all the governments in the world have already agreed that every person in the world has a right not to live in that hole. So leave no one in the hole. But, and this is a very 21st century but, we know that as we seek to meet our needs and our wants, we put pressure on our planetary home and her living systems. We start to cause climate breakdown. We acidify the oceans. We strip the soils. We create a hole in the ozone layer, break down the web of life. So So we need to stay within this ecological ceiling, which is of 9 planetary boundaries, the life-supporting systems that actually make life work and keep us in stability on this only known living planet. We would be crazy to be kicking ourselves out of that zone. So the donut says simply, leave no one in the hole, don't overshoot Earth's limits. That's the goal. Meet the needs of all people within the means of the living planet. If economics classes began on day one, not with supply and demand, but with this, the entire degree would be different if it follows. If we really stick to this goal, everything changes. And perhaps that's why they resist, because it's just too radical a change to make. But it's a change that makes sense on Earth. If the goal is no longer endless growth, but thriving in balance, just do this with your hands, like thriving. Yeah, feel it. Oh, you look lovely, you look lovely. Right? It's like a heartbeat. We know our bodies stay alive because we are in balance. We remain in a healthy zone. Nothing in us grows endlessly, and if it does, we call it cancer, and we act to take it out. We understand that health is balance, not endless growth. So if that's the shape of progress, the challenge is that right now, we are way out of balance. This is the whole world, billions of people falling short on the essentials of life. All of that red in the middle is the extent to which people worldwide cannot meet their basic needs. But we're already overshooting 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. Our generational challenge, and I'm talking to the people my age, 50-year-olds, right? Let's not leave this on the kids. Our generational challenge is to be the ones who start turning this story around now. And let's just remind ourselves that last century's economists did not see this. Why on earth would we expect their theories to help? Last century's government policies were not designed to deal with this. Why would we think they would work now? Last century's businesses were not designed to help be part of this transformation. Why would we think that 20th century business models were going to be appropriate now? It's time to rethink. And you can either say that's overwhelming, or you can say this is a phenomenal opportunity. I'm showing you a picture of the whole world, but of course there are huge inequalities between which countries have created impacts and which people bear those impacts. So here are just 4 countries of national donuts, and if you want to look at more, if you go to this website, goodlife.leeds.ac.uk, you can see 150 countries. We've got Malawi, massive human shortfall, not overshooting any of the planetary boundaries. China, a double whammy challenge, shortfall and overshoot. France, still a little bit of social shortfall, significant overshoot. And hello, United States, massive ecological overshoot. Now let me put these 4 in a scatter plot of around 50 countries. The place where every country should be aiming to be is that top left-hand corner, that green donut. That is where we rise up to meet the needs of all people, but we do so coming back within the means of the planet, right? So the first thing you notice is that there's nobody there. Costa Rica is closer than any other. So next time you find yourself or hear somebody talking about developed countries, you can say, I'm sorry, where do you mean? I don't know of any developed countries. There's not a single country here that should be calling itself developed. There's nothing developed about overshooting planetary boundaries. The history of pursuing economic growth generally does this. Countries rise up. That really improves people's living standards when you're Malawi, doubling your income, massive improvement. But instead of just rising into the donut, they go straight past it, into ecological overshoot. So just going for growth, like my country's government is doing right now, is not going to take us home. We need a totally different direction of what we would call development today. Is it going to be possible for low-income countries to rise up and meet their people's needs without overshooting planetary boundaries like almost everybody before them has done? That will be unprecedented. middle-income countries like Russia, Mexico, Iran, China, to meet people's needs and come back within planetary boundaries at the same time. This is pretty unprecedented. And high-income countries like this one, like mine, like all of Europe, like North America, to massively come back, reducing that very red overshoot. This too is unprecedented. So there's a lot of ambition and a lot of humility required from us all right now. And to make this possible across the world, we surely need a major rebalancing. This may be reparations, redistribution of wealth, rebalancing of voice and power in international institutions, rewriting of trade and finance rules so they're not rigged against the world's poorest countries forever. For me, this is the map against which I judge every policy, local or global. Is it taking us in this direction or not? But what I really care about is not the policies, is the mindset. What if we wanted today's students to be given half a chance of doing this? What would you actually want them to be learning? I'm going to share with you 3 big ideas that I think have to be at the heart of a 21st century economics education. First, we are not this rational economic man. We are pro-social. We're the most social of all mammals, even better than the naked mole rat. Here's the naked mole rat on stage here. We're even more social than the rats. We cooperate and collaborate and we share with people beyond our immediate family. We have incredible pro-social skills if we design institutions to allow us to trust and to collaborate and reciprocate. We have to tap into that. That is the story we need to tell ourselves about humanity and nurture that potential. Second, we need to recognize that we are not at the pyramid of life. Nature is not a Lego block for humanity to play with. We are enmeshed in the web of life and crazy if we can't see it. We've got to realize we've inherited linear, degenerative economic systems. We take Earth's materials, make them into stuff we want, use it for a while, and then throw it away. And that is pushing us every day over planetary boundaries. We have to move to this regenerative, circular, cyclical economy where resources aren't used up, they're used again and again and again, far more carefully, collectively, creatively, and slowly, so that we work with and within the cycles of the living world. We've also inherited economies that are extraordinarily divisive, throwing up billionaires by the day, supercharged by COVID, supercharged now by AI and tech bros. There is absolutely no chance that humanity can live in the donut in such an unequal world as we have now, where 1%, the richest 1% of people own half of the world's wealth. Did you hear that? The richest 1% of people own half of the world's wealth. No chance. We have to create an economy that is far more distributed by design, that shares the value and opportunity that's created with everybody who co-creates it. And that turns out to be the whole of society. So these are major shifts we need to make. From degenerative to regenerative, from divisive to distributive, and a new portrait of who we are as people and the potential that we have to be. I put ideas like these into my book, Donut Economics, because I wanted to bring together all the economics I was never taught. La théorie du donut, in French. These are just 7 ways to think. There are many more, but I believe today's students have the right to learn this. It's what they need, the beginnings of an equipment. Still, these are just ideas on a page. What good are ideas on a page? Well, back in 1947, Milton Friedman and some neoliberal economists got together and they started to invent a new economic theory. They called it neoliberalism. They wanted to get it onto the international stage. It took them 33 years until Reagan and Thatcher took power in 1980, and then they created a neoliberal economy everywhere. But while he was waiting for these 33 years, Milton Friedman said, only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. He made sure that his neoliberal ideas were lying around in a lot of places. They set up think tanks across Europe and America. They paid for professors to have permanent chairs in universities, so that when finally Reagan and Thatcher came to power, they were surrounded. And neoliberalism was ready for the crises of the late 70s. It was the alternative. So I take a lot of inspiration from Milton Friedman, not from his economics, but from his strategy. However, I would say, Milton, why would you want ideas only to be lying around? Wouldn't you want them to be up and running? Wouldn't you want there to be proof of practice? We know that crises are coming. I want it to be happening. And that's what started happening to donut economics. Back in 2019, the city of Amsterdam decided to place the donut at the heart of their circularity strategy to become a circular city by 2050. When they announced that, in the height of the COVID crisis, when they announced that, 6 weeks later, Copenhagen votes with a massive majority, well, we're going to explore what donut economics means for us. Then Brussels and Barcelona, that's just the ABC cities. I thought, are we going to only get the ABC? Are we going to do this alphabetically at first? No, because now today there are over 50 towns and cities and districts worldwide that have publicly placed the concepts and tools of donut economics at the heart of their city strategy. They have decided that these ideas suit what they have been elected to do and the transformation that they seek to bring about. Let me show you just a few. Barcelona, you can see they created their own donut, they gathered the data. It's a brave politician who publishes these data. This is not a pretty picture. This is a picture of human shortfall and of ecological overshoot. And then they set themselves for golf and they say, we must move in this direction. And they're combining it with the radical transformations that they're making in the streets of the city, taking out cars, bringing in nature, bringing in community, regenerative and distributive. Here in France, the city of Grenoble is doing amazing work. In 2022, they said, we want to promise a child born today that by the time they're 18, in 2040, we will be a city well on the way to being a thriving city living in the donut. They have created their own city donut, as you can see. They are embedding it in their policies, their strategies. They're introducing it to the people of the city, having conversations. What does it mean for us to become regenerative and distributive here in Grenoble? They're doing incredible work. And I know it's going to inspire many, many more French cities. But it's not just in Europe. In Bhutan, the government of Bhutan said, this looks like the kind of future we envision. Here's our imagination of the future of Bhutan. We want to use the donut together with our concept of gross national happiness to reinvent our future. So we've put out a report. If you're interested, this report documents lots of places in very different contexts worldwide of how they're getting started. And it's about getting started, about turning the corner and going in a different direction. Cities are in action. Local governments are in action. And they are proof of practice that a different vision and a different reality is possible. But what about business? Let me finish with the world of business. And let me come back to this donut, right? This is the state of the world. And I broke it down by countries. But of course, companies have a very big role here. So I'm just going to bring out a story of what business has been doing over the last 12 months with some headlines from the newspapers in just the last 12 months. Shell. Oh, they've watered down their net zero targets. They're moving away from renewables. Equinor, the Norwegian company, trying to invest in the UK. They've cut their energy ambitions. They're focusing on shareholder value. At least that's honest. BP, moving away from renewables. Well, you might say to me, what did you expect? They're fossil fuel companies. Come on, be realistic. Okay. Unilever, everybody's favorite sustainability company, they're watering down their green pledges. Nearly 240 major companies have missed their science-based targets that they set for themselves, and now they're missing them. Circularity, it's falling. It's only tiny, it's not even 10%, and it's falling. Dividend payments for shareholders are soaring, while workers' pay stagnates. And the world's 5 richest men double their money as the poorest get poorer. Oh, but the stock markets have been doing really well, except till last week when Trump did a few things. This is the story of business. This is what business is doing for the donut. So anybody here in the world of business, this is a place where we need transformation. Lots of companies come to us and say, we love the donut, we would love to work with donut economics, and I often think, I'm sure you would. Nice logo on your website, hey? We say to companies, if you're serious about this, we don't want to talk about the design of your products. We want to talk about the design of your company. And I'm going to offer you 5 design traits. I invite you, every single company that you look at, whether you love it or hate it, you work for it, you run it, you're employed by it, 5 design traits of every company that we should think about. What is its purpose? Why does this company even exist in the world? Is it in service of itself? Or is it a vehicle in service of the world? What about its networks, its employees, its suppliers, its customers? Does it live out its values, or does it exploit people? How is this company governed? Who's in the room when decisions get made? Who's on the board? Are future generations on the board? Is nature on the board? Are workers on the board? What are the metrics of success? As we go deeper, it gets more profound. It's like corporate psychotherapy. What lies at the bottom is really, really deep. How is this company owned? By shareholders? By a family for 300 years? By employees? By venture capital? By the state? As a co-op? Because how it's owned determines what sits at the bottom here. Finance. How is this company financed? Where's the money coming from? And therefore, what does that money expect and extract and demand? What is reinvested in the purpose and what is extracted for the pockets? We can just ask ourselves 2 big questions here. What is it time to let go of and leave behind in the world of business? Because this is 20th century business designs are not going to get us to where we need to go. And what can companies start doing and amplify? This is the question we ask to every company. If you don't change your deep design, you are not going to be able to be in service of the life. You're not going to be able to be a business that helps bring humanity in the donut. So I leave you with a goal that's worthy of our times. It's not the only one, it's a possible one. It's a compass we can use. And I invite you just to ask yourself, how in my life, in my work, how I invest and divest and protest and vote and volunteer, how I eat and travel and fight and bank and heat my home, and how I call for change in my work. And if I teach economics, what kind of economics do I teach? It's time to teach today's generation the economics they deserve. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup à Kate pour cette introduction essentielle. Ça fait un bien fou de vous entendre. Vous restez avec nous, évidemment. On a plein de questions à vous poser. Je me tourne à présent vers vous, Mathis, si vous êtes toujours avec nous depuis la Californie. On va continuer sur la dimension un peu théorique et puis on ira ensuite très rapidement dans le concret. Mathis, vous depuis 30 ans, on le disait tout à l'heure, vous alertez sur un point essentiel. Nos économies reposent intégralement sur ce que vous appelez les flux physiques, donc les terres, les matériaux, l'énergie, entre autres. Or, la plupart de nos décideurs semblent avoir complètement occulté cette dimension dans leur prise de décision. Vous comparez souvent cette situation à celle d'un pilote en fait, qui ferait voler son avion sans avoir ni instrument de bord ni même accès à la jauge de carburant, autant dire que peu d'entre nous ont envie d'y embarquer. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire en quoi consiste donc cette approche économique basée sur les flux physiques et en quoi surtout elle doit complètement changer finalement notre façon de regarder la performance économique telle qu'on la regarde aujourd'hui?
Merci beaucoup pour m'avoir and wonderful to hear Kate. As she said, we are biological beings. I am a bag of ocean water walking on land with nearly 3 billion years of evolutionary memory, because that's what makes up our bodies. We are Earth on some level. And when you use the word resource, you should become clear already, because the word means regenerate, the source. Where does it come from? That in the end, the biological resources, the regenerative resources, are the mother of all resources. When people hear resources, they think of, oh, lithium, or maybe fossil fuels, but in the end, the much more significant resources is what Earth can regenerate, because they limit everything. How much food we can consume, how much timber there is, but also how much fossil fuel we can use, because there's too much underground. So it also limits how much we can burn, because it's limited by how much CO2 the biosphere can absorb. Also, mining in the end is much more limited by the biosphere, because there's lots underground, but how much biosphere are willing to destroy to get to this? So looking at the world from this perspective and saying, ultimately, we depend on the flows of nature. How much nature is there? How much do we use is the kind of ultimate question to understand how big are we as humanity or as a country compared to our planet. That's what we essentially do. We look at the world like a farmer, as if the world was a farm, because actually it is in the end. It's the biggest farm we have, or every country is a farm, and the question is, how hungry are we for everything we use compared to what the farm can regenerate? And what we find is that that's basic accounting. Just add up how much space do we need for our apples, for the oranges, for the rubber we use, for the cotton, to absorb the CO2. We can add it all up. We can compare that. It's very straightforward accounting. And what we come to the conclusion is that currently the demand on the planet is about 70% higher than what Earth can renew. And that's possible because we can deplete the assets. We can fill the atmosphere with CO2, we can deplete the soils, we can deplete the fresh water, etc. We can overfish, but in the end, the question is, an interesting question. Can we live within the planetary limits? Within the planetary limits? And the answer is pretty obvious. We will, whether we like it or not. The question is how. Will we be forced by physical constraints, by disaster, or can we design our way, as Kate pointed out, on a pathway that actually enables thriving? But the question is not, do we want to accept limits or not? They're here. It's like, do you accept gravity? You cannot accept it. By accepting gravity, it makes it more understandable why it's harder to go uphill than downhill. But that's just kind of the reality we live in.
Je pense qu'on est tous d'accord là-dessus. Vous avez voulu donc mesurer, vous avez créé ce Global Footprint qui agit comme un tableau de bord finalement que vous mettez à disposition des décideurs pour voir d'un point de vue écologique les accès auxquels ils peuvent avoir les accès aux ressources auxquelles ils peuvent avoir. Bref, vous avez compris. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous raconter comment fonctionne cet outil, Mathis, et surtout ce qui nous dit de la situation actuelle et surtout de l'urgence quelque part dans laquelle on s'inscrit d'un point de vue environnemental?
So many of you, or Kate also talked about GDP, which is an accounting system to look at the value-added economy. We provide a physical measure, just based on no money, just physics. How many flows do we depend on? How many are available? Now that's produced every year by York University in Toronto under the guidance of a governance body we call Footprint Data Foundation, using all the possible data points of the UN. Why the UN? Because we don't want to be data pickers. We want to say, these are the official data points that countries provide. What does it mean in the end? How much do we use timber and orange juice, etc.? So we use about 15,000 data points every year for every country and every year to then calculate the balance. And then you can do a time series. You can see how things have evolved since 1961. That's when the UN started to more consistently put data sets together. We make that available if you go to data.footprintnetwork.org. That is a data platform where you can click on every country and see to what extent, what's the trend, what do they use per person, what do they use as a whole country, how does it compare with the biocapacity available on the planet within their own country. And then you can start to think, what does that mean in a world that it's overusing its resource space? For a country to use more than what you have, that becomes quite tight. So the baseline is the following, and I think that's from where we start.
Et comment
72% of the 72% of the world population now live in countries, that's just kind of the essential statistics, 72% of the world population now live in countries that face two challenges simultaneously. They, on the one hand, use more than what they have available within their own country. And then you can say, okay, if they have the money, then they can buy it from somewhere else. But then there's the second challenge, that also they have less than world average income, meaning they can buy less from the others than others can buy from them. So they're in a very resource insecure situation. And that's becoming the big pivot, I think, also for the 21st century, that what we have missed out totally is that resource security is actually an essential determinant of economic long-term success. So you cannot operate without input, there's no output. And we're now in a situation where most people in the world severely are exposed to resource insecurity.
Et comment est-ce que vous expliquez que nos décideurs politiques et économiques aient autant de mal à regarder cette vérité en face? Est-ce qu'il y a, je ne sais pas s'il y avait un chiffre ou un élément qui pourrait pour vous créer cet électrochoc dont on a tant besoin, lequel serait-il?
I think it's based on a big misconception that most people associate sustainability with sacrifice and suffering. Oh yeah, I know it's necessary, but I don't want to give myself up. I don't want to eat less chocolate. So we are in this kind of tension. We don't want to know. We call it sometimes inconvenient truth, and that's already the first problem. If you call it inconvenient, why would you want to take on inconvenience? You know, so why does it help you to make better decisions? And to me, the argument is quite simple. Understanding the world only has benefits because we can make better bets. Every decision in the end is like a bet, you know, to say, should we invest in this? Should we build a city like this or like that? And by understanding our context more clearly, we can ensure that our bets have a much higher chance to be successful. If we continue to build out the world in a way that is inconsistent with physical reality, we build ourselves a trap, or what some people call, you know, the stranded assets. And so countries still, too few, don't recognize the damage they do to themselves by investing in the wrong economy.
Ok, alors une fois qu'on s'est dit ça, donc là on est au clair sur la théorie, on sait tous à peu près le cap qu'on se donne et qu'on doit suivre collectivement. Rentrons maintenant un peu dans le concret, vous l'avez un peu évoqué Kate tout à l'heure, et la meilleure façon peut-être de rentrer dans le concret, c'est d'essayer de se projeter collectivement dans ce monde d'après désirable. Imaginons nous en 2050, donc dans 25 ans précisément à partir d'aujourd'hui, soyons fous, l'Université de la Terre a complètement transformé les mentalités en France et partout dans le monde. Les décideurs ont décidé de s'emparer de vos théories. Les théories donc sont devenues la norme. À quoi ressemble ce monde? Comment est-ce qu'on produit? Comment est-ce qu'on consomme? Comment est-ce qu'on arbitre nos décisions? Quels sont peut-être les indicateurs de réussite qui sont utilisés donc par nos décideurs politiques et économiques? Racontez-nous, Kate, ce monde-là.
So first of all, it's really soon, right? I think we still think of 2050 as like way out there. Just think back to 2000. Where were you? Where were you dancing 1999 away with Prince? It's so recent. It's like just that. I imagine it, and I've been, you can go places, you can go to streets that are already there, right? If you could join them up, those streets and these companies, it's already there, scattered, but I'm going to just jump up and imagine walking down a street, right? The sound of is happening for me. So something's being refurbished, and this is being recycled and renovated, and there's a building that's been retrofitted and regenerated here. So this because we will be in a much more circular economy, we will be so much more aware of materials. They will be stored in the city, and we will love seeing how buildings get reused. It's creative because instead of shipping things across the world, you are using the materials that are here, you are using what's local. So it will be much more creative. There will be many more high-touch jobs that require us to reinvent buildings, reinvent spaces, to look after the greenery in spaces. But it'll also be much more distinctly local. You know, you'll actually be able to go to another city and it feels like a different place. Not with all those same chains selling you the same burgers and coffees. The food is different. The culture is different because it's actually relocalizing to use its own local materials. So I think of it as a very creative place. I also think we'll see a big shift in what the environmental journalist George Monbiot calls moving from private luxury and public squalor, he says, we've got today in too many places, to much more public luxury and private sufficiency. And actually, I think Paris is already a place that's showing us, the beach along the river, along the Sens, these spaces of public luxury, so that people have sufficiency. And I think we will learn a sufficiency. I notice, here you have this frugalité, or sobriété, right? You talk about sobriété. I mean, still in the UK, if you say sobriété, people say, oh, you don't drink alcohol? We don't have this culture yet. I was really struck when it began to be a topic in here in France. So we will change our mindsets, and we will, as Matthias says, it won't be like, oh, this is, I'm giving things up, it's sacrifices. Actually, I prefer this. I want to live lighter. So I think it's going to be really creative. It's going to be really distinct in different places, and it's already possible. You can visit streets that are already there.
Mathis, peut-être Kate aussi, on évoquait tout à l'heure la question des indicateurs de performance économique. Vous convergez tous les deux dans le fait de rechallenger complètement la notion de croissance et de PIB. Alors, on a peu de temps, donc on ne va pas rentrer en profondeur dans ce débat qui est infiniment complexe, mais en 2050, dans un monde transformé, quels sont les indicateurs qui guident nos économies?
It's actually already today. The question is not what will be, but already today, the most transformative question to me is to ask yourself what's going to be valuable in the inevitable future of climate change and resource constraints. Obviously, things that will be able to operate, because those things that are able to operate will lose in value, obviously. What's going to be able to operate in that future are things, or the most valuable things are those, when you have more of them, global pressure goes down, because they will not run into constraints, they will be needed more, they will not have kind of the price pressure from expensive resources. So it's those economies that will start to flourish. So already today, I think if you think from a value proposition, it's things that have the ability to reduce demand on the planet while being economically viable, that have the highest value gain proposition. Why that's not seen, I'm not totally sure, because we believe too much in GDP, but the alignment between what's economically necessary to thrive and ecological constraints is far stronger than people think.
And so already some of those cities I was showing have created their own new metrics. They have them. They have their own donut. And over long term, they will transform themselves in there. If I don't know, Barcelona, no, let me bring this home. If the United Kingdom, our government is really pushing for growth and they're not getting it. If we got 1.2% of growth over the next half year, so what? I mean, was there an oil spill? Yes, there was, by the way. There's just been an oil spill. So there will be money spent cleaning up an oil spill. Yeah, that great growth. Is it because we're suddenly investing in weapons? Or is it because we're investing in schools and regenerating the soil and restoring the agriculture and repairing our ability? So GDP just doesn't tell you anything about what actually matters. We need to measure life in her own terms, in terms of human well-being and outcomes, in terms of nature's well-being. The global footprint that Matisse has so brilliantly pioneered, and actually, to be completely honest, completely inspired me to get into this work. This already has given us this metric. The donut gives it from another angle. It's just different angles on the same thing. But the good news is we are moving into a century of the data revolution. We are going to have more data, more frequently, more nuanced, more locally. When Simon Kuznets invented GDP in 1955, I think he would roll over in his grave if he knew that we were still using it. He would have moved, he would be using the footprint already, for sure.
Il est en train. On parle là de concret. Vous avez évoqué tout à l'heure les cas de Grenoble, de Barcelone, qui sont déjà très largement en chemin. Et en même temps, vous évoquiez tout à l'heure la complexité à rendre ça possible dans les entreprises. Mathis, vous accompagnez beaucoup d'entreprises à travers le network que vous avez créé. Est-ce que vous auriez un exemple concret d'entreprise qui a vraiment mis en place le Global Footprint comme un outil, comme une boussole stratégique en vérité dans ses décisions, pas comme un outil de reporting quelconque, mais vraiment comme voilà, un outil de décision stratégique court, moyen et long terme?
Here's just one example. The world, on average, to produce $1 in a given year requires about 2 square meters of ecologically productive space. That's kind of the size of a single bed or a big table. That's the space needed to generate $1 every year in value add. That's the world average, and it differs around the world. We just were working with a company in Germany that does recycling, and they wanted to find out what's our ratio. The interesting thing is that recycling company, they require resources to run their trucks and their factories, etc. But for every unit of resources that they use, they are saving 7. And so you can then translate that into value add, and what we find out is that for every dollar value add they generate for society and for themselves, the footprint of humanity goes down 30 square meters, or 15 times more down than the average in the world goes up. Now, it's not replicable to do that in the entire world, but they're providing a clear service to humanity. And so they don't need to be afraid of the resource constraints we're moving into. They know they will be more useful and more needed in that future. We then also translated that number into how does that affect Earth Overshoot Day? They wanted to know, like, is it moving Earth Overshoot Day what we do? And we said, you're too small as a company. You have about $1 billion turnover, but you're too small, it will not show up. So we did calculate, and we found out that this company alone moves Earth Overshoot Day 7 minutes. They got very excited about that.
Can I ask, Mathis, what's the design of the company? Is it traded on the stock market? Is it privately owned?
It's a family company. So the family company started also with recognizing kind of that it will be an ecological future, and that's what they put their energy into. So
family companies have wonderful assets called grandchildren, who tug on grandpa's sleeve and say, Grandpa, what is it you do with your business? And you know, we've probably all met CEOs and founders who suddenly start showing you photographs of their grandchildren, and it's an amazing moment in someone's life because it brings the heart and the long-term thinking together with the business strategy. So I'm not at all surprised that you're telling me it's not a shareholder-owned company. It's got family values, and the young generation can play such an important role in bringing morality and their long future right into the heart of business.
Exactement, et donc c'est formidable de voir qu'effectivement on a des vrais endroits où ça fonctionne, des entreprises, des collectivités, des villes, mais le vrai sujet, je pense qu'on est tous d'accord là-dessus, c'est comment est-ce qu'on arrive à scaler, comment est-ce qu'on arrive à passer à l'échelle, à en faire une norme et pas seulement des îlots de cohérence ou des exceptions finalement. Vous qui avez ce regard très international à travers le DEAL, donc le Donut Economic Action Lab et le Global Footprint Network, vous êtes un peu comme des tours de contrôle dans ce monde. Comment est-ce que vous voyez cette dynamique? Vous avez montré tout à l'heure une carte où il y avait plein d'endroits où cette petite graine était plantée et grandissait. Est-ce que vous avez le sentiment qu'on est vraiment on a enclenché, ou vous avez enclenché quelque chose de structurant, ou est-ce que vous vous dites non mais là c'est beaucoup trop embryonnaire, on est beaucoup trop loin, si on se parle en vérité des attentes que vous aviez quand vous avez créé ces mouvements?
I don't know which way the future goes. I don't think any of us do. We know that there are many crises, and in the last, say, 4 or 5 months, all sorts of things have kicked off that we weren't thinking of. Our governments are suddenly spending on military, stripping back social investment, all sorts of things. What we do know is that there are crises coming. So I really take seriously the advice from Milton Friedman, because he won in the end, right? He succeeded. So prepare for crisis. And how can you prepare for crisis? In crises, people can respond in very different ways. They can freeze, they can suddenly go defensive, and you hear sometimes governments saying, like, we're in a fight, in a war against nature. And you think, no, my friend, you're really not in a war against nature. That's the wrong frame. Or they can say, This clearly doesn't work. What else can we do? In Melbourne, Australia, they had huge wildfires, you'll probably remember, in 2022. And COVID, right? So double whammy crisis. And many people in Melbourne just said, this economy doesn't work, then what? And they turned to donut economics, and they've now created, just in that city, it was so clearly inspired by crisis. So I can only speak for myself. The strategy we are following is to work with the pioneers, to amplify what they do, to celebrate what they do. We've never once tried to persuade anybody to use the donut. I've never lobbied anybody. I can't stand wasting my time trying to persuade someone. There are so many people who want to do it because they are persuaded by other people already doing it. So that's our strategy. Will it work? Hell, I don't know. Is it what I dedicate my life to? Yes.
Je pense qu'on peut vous applaudir, ça fait du bien. Célébrons. Mathis, très concrètement, vous avez donc développé cet outil et à quelle proportion, pardon, à un moment parlons chiffres, à quelle proportion vous estimez le nombre de décideurs qui utilisent véritablement le global footprint aujourd'hui? On sait à quel point c'est central. Est-ce que c'est 0,01% de la population ou est-ce que vous avez quand même cet effet d'échelle que vous êtes en train de percevoir?
Thank you. Let me start first somewhere else. That in terms of what I believe is the most toxic belief that holds humanity back is that we see sustainability as what economists would call a free rider problem, meaning it would be good for humanity, but why should I give myself up? And internally people think, oh my God, if the world is getting so much more difficult, why should I give myself up for humanity? I hold even more to what I've had it before. And this is a total misconception because it's the other way around. If you, as a city, as a company, as a household, as a country, if you are not getting ready for the inevitable future of climate change and resource constraints, you will not be ready. The less other people, other countries, other companies do not prepare themselves for the inevitable future, the higher is your risk if you're not prepared for that future. So in reality, the incentives are far stronger aligned than people think. And so the question is not so much like, exactly as Kate said, do we convince anybody? It's working with those who recognize that reality. Something that in our work that has been very clear as we work with countries of higher income, like in Europe, they see that future of climate change and resource constraints that it would imply as a threat to the way they operate. And they have a hard time reconciling. So they put much more energy into how can we avoid the conversation or do something small that is not that consequential. As we engage with countries that still have a lot of ecological capacity, like, for example, countries in South America, they immediately see, oh my goodness, we are the rich ones. We have a future. And so the conversation becomes much, much easier and much, much faster. So I think that's kind of the big burden, so helping people to see that we are not trapped in a free rider problem, that actually not preparing ourselves for that future is the most silly thing we can do. There's no business case for waiting for others.
Et alors, je pense qu'on en est effectivement ici tous convaincus, mais il faut aussi qu'on soit réaliste sur l'urgence et la complexité de la situation, puisqu'on l'a encore vu avec les déclarations récentes qui nous arrivent presque tous les jours depuis les États-Unis. On n'est pas du tout aujourd'hui dans cette logique-là. On voit à quel point on reste dans une réflexion qui concerne nos secteurs, nos milieux à nous. Comment est-ce qu'on arrive à passer un peu le mur du son? Vous avez évoqué une crise tout à l'heure. On va essayer de se dire qu'on va plutôt trouver ou ensemble réfléchir à des solutions qui pourraient nous permettre véritablement de passer à l'échelle. Quelles seraient pour vous, Mathis, les conditions, les facteurs clés de succès pour faire en sorte que ces anecdotes deviennent la norme, pour rendre ça vraiment désirable, c'est ce que vous me disiez en préparant cet entretien?
As Kate said, a thriving future will be much more localized. And waiting for others is the most silly thing you can do. So if others actually are on the wrong track, it makes the case for your own activities to prepare yourself even stronger. So I think we have been a bit on the wrong track, that we believe we require global agreements before we can act. And that if others don't do it, then everything is at peril. It's the other way around.
Et donc, comment fait-on? Quels sont les, si on devait travailler ou réfléchir ensemble à quelques leviers systémiques prioritaires pour véritablement enclencher le changement, lesquels seraient-ils? Il y a un sujet qui revient souvent chez nous Français, c'est la question de la convergence entre la transformation environnementale et la compétitivité des entreprises. On voit bien que ce sont des transformations qui sont coûteuses, qui sont longues, qui sont évidemment complexes et dont on va voir le ROI, le retour sur investissement, parfois, bien souvent à très long terme. Comment est-ce qu'on peut aider les décideurs qui sont dans les situations de transformer leurs entreprises, qui sont eux-mêmes convaincus de tout ce que vous dites là, mais à convaincre plus largement de l'utilité presque à court terme, de la création de valeur générée par ce type de transformation dans des horizons de temps beaucoup plus courts pour voilà, les aider eux-mêmes à convaincre autour d'eux de tout ce qu'ils sont en train de mettre en place. On est tous dans ces problématiques-là, dans nos entreprises. Est-ce que vous, dans les changements ou dans les entreprises que vous avez accompagnées, vous avez mis en exergue des indicateurs qui ont permis d'objectiver la création de valeur, même si je sais à quel point c'est complexe?
I totally agree with Kate that convincing doesn't work. I think it's a different paradigm. I think what we need to help generate is a sense of motivation. Most people imitate what others do, but if we give into that force, because everybody, like the majority in the world is moving on the wrong track, we're not going to get there. So what's really needed for the transformation we want to see is helping people find their own innate motivation. And what does that mean in specific ways? It's three components to move forward, to get people's motivation stronger. And with motivation, I don't mean inspiration from the outside, but from the inside. Motivation you cannot give to people. You cannot eat for people, you cannot sleep for people, and you cannot give motivation for people. You can create conditions for people so they feel more motivated to produce the future that we all need. And these three conditions are you able to help them strengthen their desire for that future? And that's what Kate points out, to say, what actually has the benefit of this other future? Do people fall in love with it? If they live with a should, they will not go there. A should is just the barrier between where we are and where we want to go. People need to want it from their stomach. The second is, do people feel a sense of agency? Do they see that it actually applies to them? They can do something about it, and they don't feel helpless, because helplessness becomes like a mental health issue, that people feel so helpless. The third point is, and I think that's also where academic institutions are not serving young people, as Kate pointed out as well, is the idea of curiosity. If we are honest, we don't know how to build that transformation, how we can get there. Now we can see that as a barrier, or we can see that as an opportunity. If we don't know, that means we are all needed. It's interesting. We learn something new every day. So I think that's really the question, is not how do we convince others, but how do we generate a condition so people will find their own motivation through, as I said, desire, sense of agency, and curiosity.
Kate, vous voulez réagir? Vous voulez réagir?
Oh, I very much agree with what Matthias just said about curiosity. I love that. But talking about businesses, I mean, if we just carry on having companies that are owned and run based on shareholder returns on quarterly reports, forget it. It's destroying things. You meet so many people who work in these companies who've gone and they're going to make change from the inside, and they say, I want to be regenerative, I want to pay workers well, but every quarter we have to show that we've got growing margins and growing profits and growing market share. We are punished by the markets. So it's the deep design of a business is just completely antithetical to putting a company in service to life.
Et en même temps, notre économie aujourd'hui, elle est comme ça, en grande partie.
Yes.
Donc,
Yes,
comment fait-on?
and you were saying, what can governments do? Governments can start to reward and, well, first of all, create a vehicle, right? Entreprise à mission, you have here. We have community interest companies in the UK. It becomes a new legal form. Yes, give it a legal form. Then some cities and districts actually give preferential taxes and subsidies to companies that have formed this way. They procure from them, they buy from them. So there's a lot that actually policymakers can do to start shifting the field of business so that these companies that have social and environmental purpose are not the weird outsider, they are the beginnings of the future. And we need to shift the balance so that it's the big shareholder-owned companies that actually have to start justifying why they have a license to operate at all, because they are merely there to extract financial value. I really think when you boil this whole thing down, for me it always comes down to finance, which is an entirely human construct, demanding its 15-20% returns, versus life, which is an entirely natural concept based on the laws, not a gravity of laws of life and regeneration. And we have allowed finance to run the world, and it does not fit on this planet. And either something's going to give. Is it life or is it finance? It has to be finance. We have to remake finance and remake the businesses that it funds so that it's actually aligned with the living world.
On a mentionné tout à l'heure rapidement la question de la régulation et de la transparence. C'est un sujet dont on a beaucoup parlé en France ces derniers temps, notamment à travers la CSRD. Pareil, on ne va pas rentrer dans le débat aujourd'hui, mais j'aimerais vous entendre l'un et l'autre sur la manière dont la régulation peut servir typiquement le type de transformation que vous appelez de vos voeux, ou pas du tout à l'inverse. Quelle serait pour vous la bonne approche en termes de régulation pour favoriser la transformation sans pénaliser quelque part les bons élèves, ceux qui vont dans une économie mondialisée et avec des États-Unis qui dérégulent à très très grande échelle?
So in a couple of lines, what I hear about the CSRD is that many companies are now stripping back their actually innovative, exploratory, curious initiatives in sustainability. Stop doing all that. It's all about reporting, which is a really ironic twist, because at the first level, it's really good that we are introducing reporting requirements that are social and environmental on companies, but it's become a reporting game. And so they're just stopping all the real innovations and just getting into reporting. And for me, I think some of this comes back to the fact that if you don't redesign the basis of the company, it's just going to game the system. Companies that are actually designed to bring about that purpose, that are structured in a way, that reporting will come much more naturally to them because it's what they're already designed to do. So again, I'm just going to keep coming back to, if we think we're going to carry 20th century business into the 21st century, it's going to eat us.
Donc moins de régulation, enfin de la régulation, mais de la simplification. Vous, Mathis, vous êtes d'accord avec ça?
I think regulations that are not aligned with societal desire will not produce the outcomes we wish for. And people have beautiful brains, but they will use their brain to work around those regulations rather than to embrace them. So just focusing on the regulations to start with, I don't think will get us the results, unfortunately. I think it's important to take a step back. I think it's the underpinnings, as Kate also says. I think societies, in order to operate, need two key things, both of which we are eroding. We need to have the resource security. Without having the resources, like we're living beings, without the food, we don't live. Same thing with economies. We need to have sufficient resources to operate, and we are eroding that life support system that feeds our societies. The second thing we need is trust. Kate correctly said we are the most collaborative species on the planet, and trust enables us to work together. Both of these things, trust and ecological resources, are being eroded right now at fast pace. So I think needing to build a desire to say these are the things we need to thrive needs to be driving then the regulation, that people in society say that's what we want. To me, one indicator of kind of this poor path we are on is that when you look at countries' economic development plans, I know very, very few countries who have resource security at the core of that plan. Not to secure the resources to operate, to me, is a suicidal path. How can societies believe they can just continue to operate and get more stuff from somewhere else? We already ran out of somewhere else. We already use more than what the Earth can renew. How can we continue to build economies, and that includes cities, that require resource inputs that are not secure in the long run? So that's suicidal. I think that needs to be understood in a gut level, so then the desire for these kind of regulations is really present. Currently, we still don't have enough desire, and that's what we then see with the CSRD, that people work around it, or they just kind of do the busy work. They don't see the economic necessity to prepare ourselves for the inevitable future of climate change and resource constraints.
Et donc on en vient naturellement à la question des leaders, des décideurs, parce qu'on se demande comment c'est même imaginable de ne pas réfléchir comme vous êtes en train de le décrire, et pour autant c'est quand même aujourd'hui l'immense majorité des décideurs qu'on connaît. De quel type de leader a-t-on besoin pour mener cette transition? Est-ce que vous avez le sentiment, vous qui êtes l'un et l'autre proches de certaines grandes écoles, que les grandes écoles forment suffisamment ces leaders courageux, visionnaires, pleins de discernement dont on a besoin pour mener à bien cette transition majeure dont on est en train de se parler? Un retour en transparence.
No, not yet. No, and I feel really sorry for politicians. I mean, imagine being a politician today. You are caught in a 24-hour news cycle. Every speech you make, every tweet that goes out, they're caught responding to such short-term. And then the opposition, certainly in my country, the opposition will game that, and it just becomes so micro-focused here. I think it's also really hard to break the very mainstream economic narrative of everybody thinks, is so used to hearing that growth is good. How do you stand on a platform and say, actually, I'm not here for growth, I'm here for thriving? Oh, you want to take us back to the caves, you know. It's so easy to get ridiculed, because even the journalists often ask questions that are loaded with the presumption of growth. So it's, you know, so I want to respect people who actually stand for public office. I really respect all the politicians in the cities that I just showed who've stood up and said, I'm here for a donut. I mean, really? They had to overcome the what? What? Why a donut? Right? So, and they've adopted something that's playful, that's different. They're going in a different direction. It's so much easier to go along with the crowd than it is to say, actually, I stand for something different. So I don't think we're yet training them, because again, coming back to the universities are not yet training the majority of students in an economics that actually makes sense on planet Earth.
Mais comment c'est possible aujourd'hui que ce soit encore le cas dans une université comme Oxford, par exemple, pour ne pas les citer, mais, ou ailleurs? Comment vous expliquez qu'on en soit si loin?
I didn't understand you. How do we explain what?
Comment est-ce que vous expliquez qu'aujourd'hui des universités comme Oxford
Why do they still do this?
sont toujours dans ce monde d'avant en termes d'enseignement?
Because students going to study economics at university, if I'm very simplistic about it, there's two groups. There's this group who want to change the world. I've come, yay, see, they want to change the world. I've come to university because I want to change the world. I want to learn the mother tongue of public policy. We're going to use these tools to transform the world. And they're sitting side by side in lectures with, sorry, I don't mean to do this to you folks, but we just want to join the system. I mean, I just want to make some money. Just teach me the tools. Just teach me what I've got to do. I want to join those companies. Guess which students are going to leave university with the biggest salary? Guess how universities are ranked? The world's universities are ranked on the starting salary of their students. So guess which students the universities are going to serve? Right? It's all locked in. These guys will get paid hundreds of thousands, and you'll have to work on NGO salaries for the first 10 years. So the university departments are serving this, and by the way, the professors are professional in this. If the professors said, oh my God, we have to do ecological economics, we have to teach the global footprint, we have to teach the what, the donut, I'm no longer the expert. What does that mean about me? So it's deeply challenging to the psychology to I'm no longer the expert. And actually what I think we need is academics who are really confident enough to do what Matthias has just been saying. listen, people, we live in a time of transformation. And so you are learning a new mindset, and I'm learning it with you, and we bring our curiosity. And let's learn this together. And I'm climbing down from that mountain, and I'm going to climb this one with you. And I'm going to learn as much from you as you learn from me. That's the kind of academics we need right now.
Mathis, un petit... emmenez-nous du côté américain, parce que j'imagine qu'on en est encore très loin aussi. Comment ça se passe en Californie, les grandes écoles? Est-ce que vous avez le sentiment qu'elles ont shifté? Je vois le sourire se dessiner.
Yeah, it's probably worse than in Europe overall. It's also because universities depend on federal grants, as we can see, and so they get manipulated very easily by these grants, and from high net worth individuals that sponsor professorships, etc. So the influence of the mindset that Kate rightly criticizes is very strong in the United States. And then in addition to that, the fantastical thinking of, I would say, kind of the Silicon Valley, we call them now the tech bros, is much more present than even I estimated. So the idea that technology can solve any problem in no time at all, which is obviously quite ludicrous, but that's what is being sold, and I think they deeply believe, and that's kind of driving kind of this neglect of physical reality. I mean, how broadly even they think, oh, we can be an interplanetary species, we don't even depend on the planet. It's so surprising. If you just do the resource balance of what it takes to get a person just to the International Space Station, which is just 400 kilometers off the ground, it's probably a number of lifetimes worth of resources to get some person up there, and they don't bring much back. So it's just physically ridiculous. I think a big challenge is a branding challenge that we have, that overall so many people believe taking care of the planet, being sustainable, is a cost factor, and we cannot afford it. It's pessimistic. Acknowledging planetary constraints is pessimistic and not part of human nature. I think we need to turn that narrative around to recognize that actually thriving is optimistic. Acknowledging what is allows us to win our bets much, much more easily, and that being blind to it is suicidal and life-destructive and destructive of ourselves. This is a big branding shift. I call it branding because it's so deeply ingrained in people's minds that as soon as they hear sustainability, they think cost, compliance, more paperwork, not opportunity, and actually an insurance to a thriving future.
Et alors comment on sort de ce cercle vicieux? Parce qu'en fait, si même les universités continuent à enseigner la sustainability comme un poids et non comme une opportunité, notamment dans les cours économiques, où on commence en fait? À quel endroit on arrive à créer cette bascule? Quelle est la réponse? Elle est compliquée cette question, mais on a quand même envie de savoir.
I mean, it's great to have events as you have, but that's my observation. You know, what stands like when I explain ecological boundaries to children, they get it instantaneously. If I explain it to ministers, very few people understand that. What's separating children from ministers is an educational system that has totally failed, bringing that afore. So I think it also lies in our power to tell the stories in ways that are more accessible, like that, as Kate does, is positive, optimistic, but also real, and shows why recognizing our context is to our benefit. It's not an imposition. So that's why I would say, like, overshoot is not, it's like gravity. It's not a choice. Oh, do we accept overshoot or not? It just is. Given that it is, what are your best choices?
Can I just pick up on that? So when I first drew the donut back in 2012, I was working at Oxfam, and it's Oxfam International, so all my colleagues around the world had to sign off on this concept. And my American colleagues said, we don't know, we don't really like this donut, we don't like these boundaries things. You know, when we Americans see a boundary, we want to break right through it. And I said, really? So you're holding a little baby who's a week old, and their temperature goes up to 40 degrees. Do you say, you go girl, you go through that boundary? No. We bring that child's temperature down as fast as we can, because we totally understand that life thrives within boundaries. In fact, boundaries unleash our creativity. Talk to any architect, they'll say, don't give me a blank piece of paper, give me some parameters. Come on, give me something to work with. That will kick my creativity off. Give me something that looks impossible and I will have a genius idea. So when I see the boundaries of the donut, it's like we're inviting incredible innovation and creativity between those boundaries. Like Jimi Hendrix played amazing music on a 6-string guitar. He didn't ask for 10 strings, he just got on with it and did amazing music. Mozart, right, on a 5-octave piano. Serena Williams between the tram lines of a tennis court. It's what makes the game. That's what makes us creative. So actually, the boundaries are a complete gift. And you talk to any designer, their eyes start to twinkle because now we're going to come up with something ingenious because it's going to work within these boundaries.
Il n'y a plus qu'à. On vous applaudit encore. Peut-être une dernière question. Mathis, vous voulez réagir?
No, absolutely.
C'était bon?
It's well said.
Peut-être, je vois que l'heure tourne et il nous reste une dizaine de minutes et j'aimerais vraiment qu'on prenne quelques questions dans la salle. Difficile quand même de ne pas se parler, vous l'évoquiez tout à l'heure Mathis, de la question des ruptures technologiques et notamment de l'IA, l'IA générative qui arrive massivement et qui va complètement repenser les usages dans les entreprises, dans la société plus largement. Comment vous intégrez cette dimension-là dans votre réflexion au quotidien et dans vos actions, celles que vous menez à travers le deal et le Global Footprint Network? Est-ce que vous êtes déjà en train d'y travailler? Même si on sait que la technologie ne sauvera pas le monde, on sait qu'elle peut être à un moment un outil utile pour faire advenir les transformations dont on se parle.
I started my training as an engineer, so obviously technology is a big piece that allows us to do things that are quite amazing, including that I can be with you now through the internet. What we do from a measurement perspective is like bookkeeping. We just document every year how much is being regenerated compared to how much is being taken. So technological advances are automatically being taken account of. That's what the beauty is of accounting systems. They're boring because they look backwards, they don't look into the future, but you can look at the time trends and you can get a sense of where things may go. I think the illusion from Silicon Valley around technology is that people work in very specific fields like iPhones and they're making such enormous progress. But if you ever come to the San Francisco area, like if you look at San Francisco, it pretty much looks the same as 40 years ago. Wooden houses, badly insulated, using a lot of energy to be heated, cars that drive around, still using a lot of energy. So the overall resource consumptive system, even within Silicon Valley, hasn't changed that radically. So I'm not saying it couldn't, but the inertia of our physical systems is much, much, much slower. And so I think that's the misconception also in the political minds, that they see like a 4-year democratic period, so they have to deliver within 4 years. And the infrastructure is far slower at adapting. Oh, this is too slow, this is too boring to take on. And I think that's why we need to break it down to showing why every decision we make, every budget we take, we invest into our future. I mean, every dollar we spend, every euro we spend, whether we spend it on a hamburger, we invest in our heart attack, or we invest it into some healthy food and we invest in our health. So to recognize that we can actually choose with every budget as a city, as a company, as a country, whether we build ourselves a stronger future or not. It's measurable. We have the choice.
Kate, vous vouliez rebondir sur la partie rupture technologique, IA, générative?
Just on the point you were saying about AI, I would just say the way I think about AI is same as I showed. Like, what is its purpose? What is this thing being used for? How is it connecting with every other technology? How is it governed? How is it owned? How is it financed? And that is going to deeply, deeply determine whether AI is in service of supercharging extractive world and extracting our attention from life, or whether AI is actually a tool put in service to use. Because of course it has the potential to be highly useful. So the deep design of the ownership behind it is going to determine everything.
Très clair, merci à tous. Est-ce que vous avez des questions? Une première ici. Je crois qu'on peut déjà vous applaudir et puis on va... Merci infiniment à tous les deux.
Merci.
Les micros sont sur les tables.
Et ça marche ici. Est-ce que je peux faire travailler les traducteurs? because I have spoken with Kate before, but je m'appelle Armel Prieur de l'Institut du compte carbone. Et pour la convergence entre sociale et climatique, notre mécanisme développé depuis déjà 5 ans vise à rationner les riches et récompenser les plus modestes en donnant du pouvoir aux consommateurs, de telle sorte que les entreprises vont devoir suivre ensuite la demande des consommateurs, parce que nous allons obtenir un étiquetage du carbone d'abord, ensuite de l'eau et de la biodiversité, mais d'abord le carbone, sur tous les produits et services que nous pouvons acheter. Et de cette façon, les entreprises vont devoir suivre ensuite les demandes des consommateurs d'aller vers les moins carbonés. Et donc cette façon est tout à fait cohérente avec le donut de rassembler en même temps la préoccupation climatique et la préoccupation sociale. Et donc nous allons développer cela. Le démarrer par une votation nationale, c'est vraiment le plus important, que l'ensemble des citoyens donnent leur avis. Et nous commençons avec la Commission européenne à faire obtenir un accord de la Commission européenne pour cette démarche-là de développer des assemblées citoyennes de décision climatique dans tous les pays européens. Pour cela, vous pouvez signer sur une pétition actuelle Air-Quota. Et la question, c'est est-ce qu'on pourra converger par le pouvoir des consommateurs ?
Est-ce qu'on pourra converger dans le
pouvoir des consommateurs.
Par le pouvoir des consommateurs.
It's going to take many things, isn't it, right? And the power of consumers can be part of it, and consumers who actually care about looking at the packet, right? That's the question, is will people care? Will the information be simple and clear enough that they feel guided? And will the price difference not be so great that they feel they're making the unjust sacrifice? So yes, let's inform consumers, but let's not rely only on consumers doing the right thing when it's still allowed to be far, far more expensive. So I think it's one of many tools that we need to use. But many people obviously want to know which one should I buy, but it can be very overwhelming. So it's great if you're bringing together the social and the environmental in one measure, because that helps us. So let's see what happens. I hope it's successful.
Mathis, vous vouliez rebondir?
No, just a recent example of consumer intervention is the Tesla stocks, as many people who were more favorable to buy an electric car now have chosen not to buy a Tesla car and have given some feedback.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Ouais, vous pouvez utiliser le micro. Qui est sur la table?
Merci Capucine, je vais m'exprimer en anglais. First of all, Kate and Mathis, thank you so much. I feel so thankful and grateful for all the knowledge, the inspiration you're giving us today and all your work. I've got a question and a request to make. My question may seem a bit silly, but I'm totally aligned with your vision and the donut and everything. And the importance of localizing economies and patterns of consumption, of production, etc. But as you may see from the way I look, I'm a multicultural person. I come from different cultures, and I think it's made me the person, or it's brought me a lot to be able to meet and exchange with other cultures. And my question is, what do you think about traveling, and not traveling for holidays, but traveling for learning from other cultures, from other people, how they eat, how they cook, how they build, how they walk around, how they live. This is a question that really triggers me. I am totally in for localizing, but I would feel so sorry if we lost the opportunity of learning from others through travel. I think this would be something backward, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Then my request, you may or may not know that just an hour ago, we've launched a massive movement. It's still nascent, but it's a movement of individuals, citizens, who want to join forces to change the economic system, to change companies from the inside. And today we're launching the platform. It's called GenAct. And my request to both of you and Matisse here is whether you'd be willing to join that movement and become GenActors with us to change companies from the inside. Thank you.
So on this question of travel, let me answer this question by recognizing, first of all, that I'm somebody who's had huge privilege and opportunity to travel. I used to work for the United Nations, and then we would fly here and there and there. I worked for Oxfam. I traveled as a researcher for Oxfam. So it's obviously hugely enriching. I lived for 3 years in Zanzibar. It changed my life. I worked for 4 years in New York. I have 16-year-old twins. And when they finish school, I will say to them, go, take an airplane, go and see the world and travel. However, I have traveled personally enough. So I now don't fly. Actually, I'm usually where Matisse is right now. I'm almost every conference I contribute to, I'm the one on the screen. And I'm really committed to doing what he's doing, which is doing it really well, so that people feel like you're in the room, because we have to use these technologies in a brilliant way so that we can travel, zoom in, and affect and be part of a conversation. So that's personally what I've done. I just take the train and I'll go to Oslo in the summer. That's probably as far as I'm going to go on a train, and it really helps me live a calmer life, right? I'm not zooming all around. There's a wonderful app called takethejump.org, which is about, if you want your life to be aligned with 1.5 degrees global heating maximum, here are 6 things you can do. Only change your phone every 7 or 8 years, only buy 2 new items of clothing a year, don't use a private car if possible, only take a long-haul flight once every 7 or 8 years, and a short-haul flight every 2 or 3 years. So you could do that and say, I'm aligning with this, and I still get to travel. I just choose so much more carefully where I go. And I'm so much more curious when I go there. So I agree, we need to connect from cultures. And you know what? The West is going to learn so much from other countries that are already regenerative, that already figured out how to do this, because they didn't have the excessive abundance that's been here. So yes, we need to connect, but not in a crazy way. We need a different kind of travel. And yes to GenAct. I'd love to find out about more. I'll come along.
Great. Yeah, people have traveled for thousands of years. I think traveling from one airport to the next doesn't give us that much insight into the variety of life. Traveling slower, longer, probably more, so highly recommendable. I love personally traveling by bicycle, because then you see most better than a convertible car. You smell more, you see more. So seeing other places is very enriching, but doesn't need to cost the earth.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres, une dernière question peut-être ici?
Wait, does this work? Yeah. I'm Béné Meillon. I'm an academic, and I work in, my field is eco-poetics and eco-criticism. So I teach literature, right? And a lot of what I look at is eco-feminist fiction. And so my question is for Kate, and it has to do with asking you, would you please shed light on your use of she and her when you're talking about life and the planet, which I'm very familiar with in a lot of eco-feminist theory, practice, and art. And I was just curious to hear you talk about this when you're looking at economics and you're using that pronoun, she or her, for life and earth. I don't know if my question is clear.
It is clear.
Yeah.
Because I don't do it with huge intention, so I haven't theorized it and I haven't thought about it. It comes naturally to me. I'm not going to say he, and I'm not going to say it. And actually, I would look to the work of someone like Robin Wall Kimmerer, who says we need other words, right? Kin and ki, and I find that really inspiring. So it's probably, I'm not going to say it, and I'm not going to say he, so I use she. It's that profound, or not.
Un grand merci à tous les deux. Écoutez, notre débat est terminé. L'Université de la Terre continue ce soir et demain. Donc on se retrouve à l'UNESCO pour une belle journée encore de rencontres. Merci à toutes et à tous d'avoir été présents.